Welcome to the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry, where we talk about anything and everything related to football. So this week's episode, we're actually going to continue our series on Positions Explained. We should really insert some fanfare music here. Dun, 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 dun. Positions Explained. This week, we're going to be doing our episode on what is a defender. So if you haven't tuned in to our last episode last week, it came out on Friday, a little technical difficulty, one day late, but it is out nevertheless. We went over what is a goalkeeper. So we're actually going to go over all the different positions in general in football or soccer that you see on the football pitch, and then we're actually going to dive deeply into each position, maybe the differences in the positions and how they function in the team, or the different labels in the positions. We're actually going to dive a little bit deeper after we go over all the areas of the pitch and all the different types of positions that there are. So before we dive into this episode on what a defender is for our Positions Explained series, Andrew, what are you drinking? What's quenching your thirst tonight?
We've got a nice Lagunitas Daytime Crisp Session IPA. So for those that are not familiar with Lagunitas, it's kind of a household name as far as IPAs go. I know them from my brief time living up in the North Bay, Santa Rosa area, which is where they were founded. They've got breweries elsewhere in the U.S., but I guess the purpose, we were just discussing this, the purpose behind this one is to be able to drink all day long. Very, very light, very refreshing, perfect for recording. Yeah. How about you, Harry? What do you got?
So I have a California lager from Anchor. This is different than the tropical IPA that I presented last time. This is also from the same brewery, Anchor Brewing Company, that's very close to where I live in San Francisco, California. This one's called California Lager, I guess specifically for Californians only. So if you're not Californian, I guess you can't drink it. Just kidding. You definitely can't drink it. But it's interesting. I mean, Andrew, when you talk about, the daytime lager or daytime drink by Lagunitas, what time do you think personally for yourself you would think would be socially acceptable to start drinking during a day? I'm curious.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'm going to have to cast aside the fact that you and I had beers a couple months ago at 8 a.m. to watch a United game at a pub. I don't know, maybe like noon. I don't know. It depends. If you're going for like a brunch in the city with friends, you're having a beer after a morning pickup game at lunch. I don't know. I guess it just depends on the occasion. Yeah. What's your take? When is too early for you?
If I'm still rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, it's too early. I think
okay.
I at least want to be coherent and be able to know where my bearings are, be able to get my bearings straight. I think if you're doing something like watching a game, I think it's socially acceptable at that point. But if you wake up and the first thing on your nightstand is a beer or some kind of drink, please DM us. We can get you some help. But all jokes aside, let's go ahead and start our episode today. So today's episode is going to be on a defender, everything about a defender. We're going to go through our Positions Explained series. This is the second part of our series, What is a Defender? So Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you on why a defender is important in a team, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the basics of a defender as well. So Andrew, go for it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So defender is not a position specific to soccer. We've got defenders in a lot of other different sports. But for soccer, for football, defender is an outfield position whose primary role is to stop attacks during the game and then to prevent the opposition from scoring. So they're that last line of defense, pun intended, to stop oncoming attacks. We could talk more about formation and things like that, but really you've got a couple in the back that are there to stop the opposing team from progressing play into the attacking half and getting shots off, setting up plays, offensive plays. And then we'll get into it a little bit later, but they've really evolutionized in the way that they play now, where they're not just stopping the attack, they're also setting up their team's attack, which is something pretty cool. There's some certain stats that defenders are often measured by. So when we think about stats, we think about clean sheets. So That's pretty interesting because clean sheets are no longer limited to goalkeepers.
And what is a
the
clean
onus-
sheet, Andrew, just
Yeah.
for the listeners that are just tuning in for this episode?
Yeah. Thank you, Harry. Let's rewind it a little bit. So clean sheet means no goals scored by the opposition.
Got it. Okay.
Your end of the score line says 0. So making sure that no goals are scored. So it's cool because no longer is it just the goalkeeper that's measured on keeping goals out, but also the defenders as well.
Yeah.
We've got other stats like tackles, how many tackles they're making, blocks, duels with other players in the opposing team, clearances, getting the ball out, and the list goes on. So that's basically quick and dirty what the defender is.
Yep.
And we'll kind of move into now different forms of defenders or different types of defenders. So we'll start it with the classic center back. So some people might have heard the term sweeper thrown around, but the center back, or known as the central defender, or if we rewind it in time, you and I were just talking actually before the pod, Harry, about the center half.
Yeah.
So this was early 1900s England. The formation was pretty common. It was your goalkeeper, followed by 2 fullbacks, 3 halfbacks, and then you had 5 up top. So a 2-3-5, which is pretty incredible. So you've only got 2 guys hanging out in the back. You've got 3 across the middle setting it up, and then you've got 5 attacking players. I mean, I'm getting like visions of the Flying V from the Mighty Ducks, the kids movie.
Yep. Yeah.
But so the modern role, though, in all seriousness, of the center back really arose from the central half position. So it defends in the area directly in front of the goal and tries to prevent opposing players, specifically the center forwards, from scoring. So like the number 9 players, the strikers that are really trying to make pressing runs through the center to cut down the middle and get shots off or set up plays for other opponents. So, Harry, let's get into it a little bit more. What are some of the other types of defenders that we think about when we think about the modern game and what it looks like as far as the back line goes?
Yeah. And thank you for explaining that, Andrew. I think myself, even, there's some commentators and some what are called pundits, which are commentators in Europe or in the UK on football. They still refer to center backs as center halves, and I always get confused. Are they the same thing? Or are they different? They are essentially the same thing. You can use the term interchangeably. Like Andrew said, it's literally a halfback was known as the old-timey midfielder, and they literally just expanded the defense to include what's called a center half now. But they literally sit in the back line and protect the center of the back line. That's why they're called center back now. So thank you for explaining that, Andrew. It enlightened my knowledge, and hopefully it's enlightening your knowledge as the listener. So we're going to go on to 2 more positions. Actually, I would say 1 position, just broken up into 2 different purposes. So really, what Andrew just talked about is, as the line of defense, you can think of the defense more or less so as a line. So when you think of a formation, and we're actually going to talk a little bit more about formations in our Positions Explained series as a different episode. We'll explain all the different formations, all the specifics on formations. But if you think about what Andrew just said as the center back, that's either 1, 2, or 3 people in the middle of your back line protecting your goalkeeper from those dangerous attackers or strikers or forwards from the opposing team. So their whole goal is to block a goal from going in, to make sure the ball doesn't get to the attacker from the opposing team. Most teams, if not all teams, have what's also called a fullback. So a fullback is different from a center back in the name, in as far as the name suggests. So a center back, you sit more or less in the center of the field, closer to where the goalkeeper is, closer to the midpoint of the field. If you were to cut the field in half, hot dog style, I'm going back to elementary school using some terms, but if you were to cut the length of the field in half, the center halves would be, or center backs would be, more towards that midpoint line. Whereas the fullbacks, there's a left and right position. So you can have a left, pretty much defender, that hangs out very close to the very left side of the touchline or the left boundary of the football pitch on your side, or the right back, which hangs out more so on the right side of the football pitch. And they are part of that defensive line that makes up pretty much what needs to prevent a goal from being scored on your team. So fullback, again, lines up on either side of the defense. They mark the opposition, what are called wingers or attacking midfielders. So any players that also run down the side that are attacking your team, your left and right backs will mark and keep their eyes on and prevent them from getting the ball or from moving into dangerous positions. They often actually also provide support for any midfielders ahead of them. So let's say, Andrew, you're a right back, you're a famous right back, very, very good, and your job is to defend, but also what you're good at may also be providing an outlet and a person to pass to for the midfielder that's in front of you that's also on your team. So when your team's moving the ball up and that midfielder has nowhere to go, they can go back to you, and because you're so skilled, you can provide them a person to pass to, and then you can pass to anyone else because you have maybe more of an open position or you see people, you have good vision. So you also provide support for your midfielder in front of you as one of the left or right backs. And oftentimes you take the throw in. So in games, this is actually something as a listener, it'd be good for you to note. In games, look at who takes the throw in. A lot of the times it's the left or right back. The reason for that is the left or right back, you should take throw-ins because you're moving the ball up the pitch, so you don't really need to be where the ball's going. You could just hang out more so in the back, take the throw-in, throw it to your wide midfielder or some midfield or attacking player. And another benefit of you as the left or right back taking the throw-in is that when you throw it in, really the people that are left on the pitch are usually a little bit more technically skilled than you. So when they receive the ball, they can pass it to other players in better positions and hopefully score a goal for your team. So really that's oftentimes why, as a left or right fullback, you take the throw in. And then lastly, we're going to get to the last type of back position before we get into famous defenders, is something called the wing back. So the wing back is actually a variation on the fullback. It still has the back part of its name, but it actually has a higher emphasis on attacking and getting the ball up. So wing backs actually have this dual role. So you have to defend on the team when you don't have the ball, when your team doesn't have the ball. But let's say someone on your team regains possession and gets the ball again. As the wingback, you are expected to sprint from your half of the field all the way up, hugging the side of the field that you're on. So if you're a right wingback, you hug the right side of the field and you provide that attacking outlet, and you start to bring the ball up the field, or you provide more of another man or woman up the pitch, so that you can create more attacking plays as something called a wingback. So usually you're more adventurous, you provide a little bit more width in the attacking half, and you usually really do need to have a lot of stamina and physicality and be able to get back quickly enough because you're on the opponent's half of the field a lot for those attacks. So that's the fullback and the wingback variation of the fullback. Andrew, let's talk a little bit about some famous defenders. So for those listeners that don't know the game of football or soccer as much, there's obviously historically some defenders that have lit the game up in terms of their skill in keeping clean sheets or tackling, like all those stats that you said before. Andrew, let's go over to, I think you want to talk about Roberto Carlos first, and then we can go down the list from there. So let's talk through some famous footballers that were defenders that really set the game apart for defenders to come.
Definitely. Yeah. So some of these guys that we'll talk about, haven't played in a little while, but definitely worth, pulling up YouTube clips or doing a little bit of reading on. Mm-hmm. Some of these guys are household names. Some of them, if you haven't been around the game long, you might not have heard of them, but they definitely had a huge footprint on the game. So one of those guys being Roberto Carlos, played for Real Madrid and was really known as one of the most offensive left backs in the game. So when we talk about, Harry was talking about, the fullbacks and wing backs. I mean, this guy could not only do it in defense, but also produce attack moving forward, and, was really part of so many of those iconic Real Madrid teams over the years.
Yeah. And he had a free kick against France, right?
I think he did, yeah.
The one that really, and if you search up Roberto Carlos on YouTube, that's probably the first result that comes up is he, like you said, he not only defends, but his attacking is so good that his free kicks, we won't spoil it if you've never seen it before, but it's a spectacular free kick.
Yeah. So it's, those guys, I mean, you think now of, defenders and wingbacks and fullbacks with great attacking potential and spot kicks. Trent Alexander-Arnold for Liverpool comes to mind now.
Exactly.
Guys that just really have a knack for attacking prowess. I mean, moving right along to England, right off the back of Trent Alexander-Arnold, we think about John Terry. So John Terry was a pretty iconic, one of the all-time greats as far as English defenders goes. Did his career mostly at Chelsea Football Club, won some big titles with them. He was really well known for being a tough tackler, great in the air, and then also a great leader.
And what position did he play?
He was a center back.
Got it. Yeah.
So, when we think about great in the air, that's really a strong point for a lot of these big center backs. Harry, I know you've got one on your list you want to talk about as well, but guys that can get up during corner kicks, or set pieces, free kicks, that can really be a big aerial threat. So that's really an important asset of big center backs and defenders. Another one that I think about coming to mind is Fabio Cannavaro. Played for Real Madrid, and he not only won the World Cup as Italy's captain, but he also won the Ballon d'Or, which is, we mentioned it in previous episodes, but for those that don't know, it's basically the world's best footballer. You're essentially voted for by football journalists from around the world. It's largely seen as, winning the Oscar or winning the Emmy, whoever's had the best performance throughout the year.
And it's just one person per year, right? It's not like
one. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a big deal. And he won the FIFA World Player of the Year, all in 2006.
All in 1 year. Impressive.
All in 1 year. Yeah. Super, super impressive. Also did his time at Real Madrid, amongst some other Italian clubs as well, but really, really talented. And then another iconic defender, fullback for Bayern Munich and the German national team was Philipp Lahm. He was a 2010 World Cup winner, captain of that team, one of those all-time iconic German, just through and through fullbacks that really had a lot of talent, was great defensively, but could also help generate attack moving forward. So I know I've thrown a lot of names out there. Harry, I know you're excited to talk about some of the guys on your list. Who you got as far as some of the all-time greats as far as defenders goes?
Well, I don't have a Ballon d'Or winner, but I'll talk a little bit about the people I have on my list. And Andrew, just capping off the point on Cannavaro winning that Ballon d'Or, if you think about Ballon d'Ors, you can actually search up and Google the Ballon d'Or award historically, who it's gone to. And it's always gone to usually an attacking player because they're so heavily weighted on being important for their team. They score the goals. You can't win a game without an attacking player, really, scoring those goals for you. But also, you can lose a game without a defender. So a lot of people underestimate and underrate how necessary goalkeepers and defenders are. And I'm glad that Cannavaro got the Ballon d'Or in 2006. So
yeah, definitely.
Moving right along. 4 defenders. I'll keep this short so we can go on to our next topic. So, by the way, as a listener, if you don't know any of these names or if you know some of these names, Andrew and myself both highly insist or urge, not insist, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but we strongly urge you to YouTube or Google some of these names, and we'll see if we can list these in the description of the pod as well. Really, these are great influences to learn off of the position of being a defender, whether it's a center back or a fullback, especially if you just want a visual representation of how the game's played and how it's evolved over time as well. And they're just great people to watch as well, highlight reels, etc. So the first one, going into a modern center back who is just a steel wall of a defender, Virgil van Dijk. So this is a center back. He's a Dutch center back that plays for Liverpool. And he's helped them win a title. He's helped them really accomplish really, really great things. I believe they've won a Champions League as well. So Champions League is one of the most prestigious tournaments, competitions in Europe, where all the European countries come together, qualify. It's like the European World Cup for club football. You can think about it that way. And Virgil van Dijk has been known as one of the best defenders in the past 10 years. And he's just incredibly good at what he does. And he has this technique, actually, he talked about in an interview where he actually doesn't look at the ball when he's defending. So usually as a defender, and if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm doing shoulder movements. As a defender, you tend to push the attacker away from the goal. That's your whole tactic. You don't want them to get a clear shot on goal. You don't want to push them down the middle. That's the danger zone. And you're taught as a defender, never take your eye off the ball, because if you have your eyes on their body or on their feet, you can get faked out. They go one direction with their feet, the ball goes another way, you follow their body, and then you end up losing the ball. So that's the traditional knowledge as a defender. However, Virgil van Dijk, he says oftentimes he actually watches the attacker's eyes. He actually takes a look at where they're going. So he doesn't just watch the ball, he literally eyes them up. And I think part of it, maybe they're so scared of Virgil van Dijk that when he makes eye contact with them, they just fall and collapse. Maybe that's part of it. But in all seriousness, he takes a look at their eyes and he actually sees where they're scanning, so he knows where they're going to go next. And it's this crazy, crazy mind read, almost esque thing. But he talks about it in an interview. So if you're listening, I would highly encourage you to Google or search that up. It's a very interesting interview. Rio Ferdinand, a very technical center back. He played for Manchester United, Andrew and I's team that we support in England. And he was just an incredible influence on the game, played for many, many years, just had a really good partnership with another defender called Nemanja Vidic. So great footballer as well. Paolo Maldini, Italian fullback and center back, played for AC Milan. What he was really special at is he actually didn't commit to tackles. He wasn't the type of defender that always went to ground, always slid in and try to get the ball off someone that way. He actually read the game really well, and he was really good at anticipating if an attack was coming and cutting out the play before it actually stopped or before it actually started and got to and resulted in a goal. So Paolo Maldini was a legend and is actually regarded as probably one of, if not the best defender of history. So definitely encourage you searching up Maldini's name. And then last but not least, Cafu, incredible right back for Brazil. Hardworking, very offensive-minded, put in a lot of crosses, and had something called overlapping runs. We'll talk about overlaps and underlaps and on another episode. That's a little bit more of a technical term, but for an overlap, since I mentioned the term right now, if you visualize it, it means if you pass the ball to a midfielder that's in front of you, and the midfielder actually waits for you as a defender to make what's called a run. An overlap is if you're a right back like Cafu was, you make a run on the right side of the field, close to where the boundary or the touchline is, on the outside of the midfield, and you overlap him. So you pretty much overlap that position, and they pass it to you so that you're in a further position down the pitch, and you can cross the ball in or send the ball into the 18-yard box. So those are some famous footballers. Let's move into our last section, Andrew, on how defenders have changed. So we've gone through the basics of defenders and what they do, what their position is. We've gone through some famous defenders, Andrew. We've both talked about some that we've mentioned. Andrew, how have defenders evolved from before to now? What do defenders really need to do nowadays to survive in the modern game?
Yeah, so it's interesting because as silly as it sounds, defenders are no longer just responsible for defense. That is obviously a huge part of their role in the game, and they are the primary, not shot stoppers. I shouldn't say that. That's the goalkeeper, but yeah, they are, the primary, their primary role is to stop the flow of, offense.
Yes.
But now they're so much relied on for the start of their team's offense. So winning the ball, stopping incoming pressure and press, and generating attacking opportunities. So whether it's playing diagonal balls, balls up the line, taking the ball as a wing back, flying up the line. They are. So it's really interesting because the kind of the soccer football IQ has expanded. So not only do they need to think about how am I going to stop this incoming attack, but also how am I going to then move into setting up my wingers or my strikers for, their own attack. So I think it's really a long-winded way of saying it's this dual mentality. So how do I defend and how do I start my own attack for my own team? And what comes with that is technical skills. So it's not just heading the ball away, booting it halfway across the field. I mean, sometimes there's a time and place for that, when, there's a lot of pressure, you're trying to kill time at the end of the game, but it's how do I control the ball? How do I move with the ball? Where am I looking? Where am I passing? Do I need to play it back to my goalkeeper? Do I need to juke out an incoming attacker and play it, to a midfielder or what have you? The game is so technical now that everyone, from the goalkeeper all the way up to the strikers, really needs that strong technical ability to be able to handle the ball and place it perfectly every time.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, and I kind of alluded to this, but attacking abilities. So whether you're great on set pieces, free kicks, like Trent Alexander-Arnold or Roberto Carlos, or you have the ability to run forward, take shots from outside the box, finish attacks, or just be a real threat for set pieces. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities for a corner kick for, any sort of defender or fullback to get in there and get in, a headed ball or finish in a second ball that's maybe deflected wide. So you need to be thinking about how can I also help my team score? Yeah. So those are a couple of ways that it has really progressed and evolutionized. Harry, I know that there's some other ways as well. Can you talk us through those other ways that the defender has really progressed from its kind of inception?
Yeah. So Andrew, you talked a little bit about starting the attack. So not just, and I like what you put into words there in terms of two mindsets. So a defender is not really the label of their position anymore. It doesn't just encompass defense. It's a lot more than that, which is why we have the wing back position now. But a lot of defenders need to be able to incorporate something called playing out of the back into their game. And this term you'll hear if you watch a lot more football lately, or you hear some analysis on a game, you might hear this term, can a team play out of the back? That's thrown around a lot. What that really means in layman's terms is instead of the goalkeeper, when it's a goal kick, which means the opposing team kicked it out of your end line and you get the ball back for some kind of goal kick that the goalkeeper or the defender usually takes, instead of booting the ball up 50 yards up the field and hoping that it lands on one of your players so that you can continue the attack, a lot of teams will play it short. And what that means is the goalkeeper will play it to the closest defender on the ground instead of the air, and then the defender will start the attack. The problem with that, though, historically, is that when defenders have the ball, oftentimes they weren't technical enough. So Andrew talked a lot about you need technical skill, you need to be able to attack. As a defender in the historical game before the modern game, they weren't as good on the ball. They just were known for their physical skills. They were like towering, huge, scary, monster people that if you looked at them, you would turn into stone and die. That's pretty much their reputation, though. As a defender, you were the more physical one, but you didn't need to be that technical because that was for your attacking players. But nowadays, because you have to be able to do something called break the press, which is, let's say the goalkeeper plays the ball to you, and all of a sudden you have the ball as a defender, you want to move it up the pitch to your attackers, but then 3 of the opposing team's attackers are swarming you, trying to steal the ball from you. As a defender, do you panic and suddenly lose the ball because you're not technical enough and you can't deal with that situation? Or do you just up your technical skills and learn how to play it through them, whether you find a gap, whether you play it back again, whether you run with the ball and shoulder them off? you need to do the latter because the modern game is actually switching to being able to do something called playing out of the back. So that's the long-winded description of what playing out of the back is. And then, like I said, one of the options is defenders tend to be able to run further up the field now. So they carry the ball. They're given license to just be able to get further up the pitch and almost act like a midfielder. And we'll talk about midfielders in our next episode, so stay tuned. But you're able to carry the ball and get into dangerous positions and get your team as a whole further up the field by you carrying the ball up there as well. And then last but not least, you can do something called inverting. This is a lot more technical. We're not going to get into this today, but as a fullback, if you need to provide more pretty much oomph or more firepower to your midfield, instead of staying close to the boundary line or the touch line on either side of the field, you do something called invert, is when you come inside and you actually act as another midfielder as a fullback. And you actually give your team a lot more solidity in the midfield when you're carrying the ball up. And a lot of teams do this. Manchester City is probably one of the best known teams that does this today. We won't talk about inverting in depth, but that is something that you'll also see thrown around. So I wanted to make sure you as a listener know at least what that term consists of. So really that's our summary on defenders in our series on Positions Explained. We're going to go into a lot more depth, Andrew and I, in some future episodes on specific defenders, specific positions. We're going to do a full breakdown of the center back role and the fullback role. But for today, that's probably a good description in general to learn as either a new football fan or someone that's getting back and getting more familiar to the game. Andrew, any closing thoughts on the defender position? What are your thoughts on the importance of a defender and what the listener should know?
Mm-hmm. The defender is such an important position, and I think it gets overlooked a lot. I think it's not quite as glamorous. You know, you're not scoring as many goals, but yeah. I think it is so pivotal. And I think hopefully you as a listener get a better understanding of the importance and the role that defenders play. And then also maybe start to look out for, you know, how defenders are moving, how technical they are. Are they getting up to attack? The next time you're watching a game, whether it's live or on YouTube or TV, defenders are really so important. And I think with the evolution of the game, they've gotten so much more exciting. I mean, it is incredible to watch defenders take on players on the wing, set up crosses, score goals. I think we are really in an awesome age for defenders. And I think it's come a long way, and I am so excited to see how, as the game progresses, defenders continue to progress in their roles on the pitch as well. I mean, personally, I always love it when a defender scores a goal. I think it's like the coolest thing. I used to play defense back in the day, and so that I don't know, that there's something pretty cool about that.
Absolutely.
Harry, close us out. What are your thoughts on defenders? What the audience should look for?
In my opinion, I think if you're just getting into watching the game, I think one of the most important things about learning the role of a defender is let's bring it back to the basics. Let's forget the attacking part for now. We're going to get into that on a subsequent episode. If you're watching a game and you want to watch how the defender's doing, see what direction they force the attacker into. So if as a defender, whether you're a fullback or a center back, if an attacker's coming towards you and they're dribbling the ball towards you, as a really good defender, you actually push them towards the wings. You push them towards the sides of the field so they don't get towards the goal. If you look at any defender and they're doing that really well and almost shepherding the attacker to the sides of the field, that's how you know, wow, they're really good, almost like mind games and positioning and things like that. And that's what actually makes the role of defense so interesting for me, is you have to be so good without the ball, even as much as with the ball, obviously. And then obviously some defenders that are really interesting are defenders that have unique skills. I'm going to bring up Aaron Wan-Bissaka. He's a right back that plays for Manchester United, the team that Andrew and I follow. And he has these spider legs where his legs are normal human legs, but they almost cling on and wrap around people like a spider, almost like Spider-Man. And he can tackle the ball away from pretty much anyone in the world, and he's incredible to watch. So some of these defenders are also known for very unique traits and assets that they have and they bring to the game. So a lot of it is without the ball, and that's what makes a defender interesting. So that was our overview on what is a defender in our Positions Explained series. The next pod, so if you're listening to this when this just came out, our next week's pod is actually going to be on what is a midfielder. So we're going to talk about what is a midfielder, break down all those positions in the midfield. There's actually a lot there to unpack. So we're going to go over and do a very high-level overview, and then we're going to stop or end the basic series with what is a forward or what is a striker. And then we're actually going to go more in-depth into formations, into the specific positions, and we'll hop around from there. But definitely look forward to at least 2 more episodes in the general series, and then we'll take it into the specifics from there. So that was it for today. Definitely tune in next time. Follow us on all the socials. If you like this episode, please rate this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. We'd love just your feedback as a listener, whether you DM us on Instagram or Twitter, or whether you give us a rating. It definitely helps our exposure, as well as just gives us more reason to keep doing this podcast if you like it. So that was today's episode of the Super Subs with
Andrew
and Harry. Definitely don't miss our next episode. But until then, this is the Super Subs subbing out for now. Catch you on the next one.